Welcome to Contingency Planning with Salutum Hospital. I'm Carmen Cernuska for the University of New England. Why are we here? That is the question. Well, today we are here to discuss contingency planning. What is its importance? Well, it really should always be at the forefront of everyone's minds in some capacity or another, because in the event of a cyber attack, such as via a ransomware attack, natural disaster, or server failure, we could have a very large problem on our hands if we do not have a contingency plan in place. So the goals of a contingency plan are to continue operating even if the building is inaccessible in the event of a natural disaster, minimize downtime in any event, protect patients and their data, be able to continue communicating with patients, vendors, and employees, prevent the need for paying for ransomware, and reduce costs overall. We often hear about contingency plans, whether it is for travel to ensure we get to our final destination, which may include travel insurance, or maybe it's a home renovation. Every wall that gets opened could be a Pandora's box of disaster requiring way more money than was in the budget. Contingency plan money has to be built into the budget. There is no difference with patient data. We need a contingency plan to ensure nothing happens to any of it and that we can access it at all times. We also need to be able to retrieve the old and the new at any time, make copies, send to other providers, etc. Storage becomes paramount. And where do we store it? Hard drives? The cloud? Servers on an island somewhere? Healthcare is your business, and it is a very complex one. So many providers, facilities, systems, and networks with differing hardware and software. Combine this with regulations and HIPAA requirements, and suddenly you don't know which way is up. At the very crux of all of this, though, is data governance. For without it, we would truly be upside down. Governance allows us to connect the provider's facilities, systems, and networks appropriately and with the minimal amount of risk. So, connections are made for a reason, and not just because. We are connecting precious patient data, not finding friends on social media. By making only meaningful connections, we hopefully limit risk and possibly even storage requirements. You can't protect against what you don't know exists, right? So once we identify the risks, then we prioritize what we can do first and what will give us the biggest bang for our buck. We can't do everything in one day, so we have to weigh costs against benefits in the short and long term. Now, we can talk about the buckets of bad or the things we want to protect against. Believe it or not, humans make a lot of errors. 32% in fact. Human error contributes to 32% of data loss. I also lumped lack of maintenance in here, because if we fail to properly evergreen our hardware by swapping it out before it completely fails and utilize our updates and patches, we are leaving ourselves at an even higher risk. Now, natural disasters can be more prevalent in some areas than other, but they still account for 3% of data loss. When dealing with patient data, 3% is still 3% too much. So we will include how to deal with this as well in our contingency plan. We hear so much about cybercrime corrupting our software through things like ransomware and accidentally allowing viruses in through phishing and spear phishing attacks. So we definitely want to include them in our contingency plan. Lastly, we know that malfunctioning hardware can be completely unexpected, so we definitely want a contingency plan to actually prevent it from happening as best as possible. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of how we will accomplish this. We will present the options that will create a fulsome contingency plan and then make recommendations as to where to begin so that we get the most value for our time and resources. What is also important to note is that we have to maintain this. So once the plan is agreed upon and created, there has to be a sustainability plan to keep it going over the long haul. We know that over the time, cyber criminals have become more sophisticated and it has become harder to battle them. The plan put in place today will have to continue to evolve and budgets will have to match this as hardware and software will become more sophisticated and likely increase in cost. In the event you are attacked by ransomware, all hope is not lost, but a plan must be followed to come out the other side. Just like in humans, we must isolate the infection. We want the team to recognize the infection quickly and disconnect it from the network, both hardwired, Wi-Fi, and any external storage devices. The whole point of the attack is to spread it, so we want to stop it from gaining access or the ability to communicate. Also, there may be more than one computer infected from the get-go, so look suspiciously at every computer, beginning with the closest connections. Next, identify the infection. There are sites that can help with this by identifying the culprit. If it gets to the point where ransom is being requested, the ransomware will identify itself. Once you know what you are infected with, then the teams can set to work, as they will know how it spreads, what it encrypts, and how to solution it via removal and disinfection. Reporting is another important piece of the puzzle, as you want the FBI to know about the ransomware attack, because they may be learning something new about the sophistication of the cybercriminals, or maybe have a link to another ongoing case. Now, if you can't solution the problem, then you have to decide how to proceed. Pay the ransom, try and remove the malware, or wipe the system and start over. Most organizations do not even consider paying the ransom, as they don't trust that they will get back their data. So then you can try to remove the malware from the system, or just wipe them completely and reinstall them from safe backups and clean operating systems and applications. This is likely the best option to make sure you have gotten rid of everything. As a best practice, you should really wipe the system and start fresh. This is the best option to make sure the malware is fully removed. A system restore is tempting, but malware can bury itself into the deepest, darkest corners and may still be living in the system restore file. Also, the system restore doesn't save old copies of personal files or delete or replace any personal files when restoring. So it really isn't a proper backup. So just like a good round of bleach, wipe it clean and start again. What about the local backups? Well, they also can be infected if they're connected to the infected computers. So then you won't have access if the encryption has fully taken over. When disaster strikes, take a look at your hardware and see if you can even get physical access to power down the devices. If there is visible damage to the hardware due to a natural disaster, then do not power it on. Depending on the area, salt water can be very catastrophic, so do not turn on any device that has been flooded with salt water. If the platter inside the hard drive has melted, then there is no chance of recovery from that device. If recovering from devices that are questionable related to damage, then restore to the previous volume. Do not use the last backup, as it will have been damaged related to the natural disaster. In order to recover from a server failure, an image-based backup will provide the best recovery. Without this, a daily backup will be required to a local and off-site or cloud-based backup, with all pieces required for continuation of hospital functions. A new server will be required, or a factory reset server with reinstalled recovery media along with all specifications, software, and settings. Be proactive and look at your servers. How old are they? How much usage do they have? Budget for replacements so that they do not become so outdated that they are a liability. Hardware always factors in. So, within the policies and procedures now, we will need to outline the responsibilities of each team in the event of unexpected and planned downtimes. It will further define where the paper documents are located for everyone to continue to work on the front lines in all areas. The members of the IT team will have designated leads to drive the work when it is an unexpected downtime due to any of the issues noted. So if a network issue Then, the network team will take point on the issue and work to resolve it and decide what other teams are required, such as the applications team or the enterprise architects. Education will need to be provided for all staff to have an awareness of the contingency plan for an outage in the event it is planned or unplanned, which will use the policies and procedures as the basis for the education. Each area will require slightly different iterations depending on what systems they use and what the effect is if that system goes offline. So, for example, if the central monitors in the cardiac unit go down as opposed to the reference library, the education for the IT teams will be different as they will be solutioning and will need to be kept up to date on the system's hardware and beyond that they support, as well as the latest malware, phishing, etc. Overall, the plan will need to be reviewed at least annually by everyone in the organization, with a mandatory sign-off that it has been reviewed. This review will showcase the downtime procedures for those non-IT personnel and be more fulsome and in-depth for the IT teams. The plan itself will be reviewed for changes also by the IT management teams with consultation from frontline clinical and IT members to ensure it has the most up-to-date plans and also makes logical sense for applying the plan. So, in order to prevent this from happening again, you will want a place to store your backups that are completely separate from the network and computers that you are working with. Ensure that your backups are done often and are comprehensive on those isolated backup locations. Immutable backups make the data fixed, unchangeable, and undeletable based on a specific time frame set by the end user. Immutability should be set on critical data to be able to quickly restore uninfected data from the immutable backups, including applications. Offline backups should be stored in an area away from the actual network, which could be an external drive or in the cloud. Make sure that your antivirus and anti-malware software are up to date with all updates and patches. Install quarantine software for potential phishing attacks so that staff can remove a questionable email with the click of a button. Networks should be kept segmented to keep critical computers isolated and prevent the spread of malware in the event of an attack. Review network sharing and turn off any sharing that is truly unnecessary. Administrator rights should be reviewed often to ensure that only the people who require that level of permissions have them. When people leave the organization, ensure their access is completely removed and permissions and passwords are changed where required. Always give users the lowest level of access they require to do their work. Restrict the ability to write to file servers as much as possible. Do not allow staff to gain access to areas they do not require, such as a server room. Educate everyone on best practices regarding keeping login information secure and not leaving computers logged in unattended. Do not allow anyone to view your screen while you are typing in passwords. Never store all information in one place because a disaster can take it all out in one fell swoop. Depending on what natural disasters are prevalent in this area, consider having backups in an area that is different geographically. Consider disaster recovery as a service which provides redundancy to save mission critical information and applications so that the hospital does not experience downtime related to this. This also means that your local IT team does not have to worry about this piece of the puzzle. Redundancy is a good thing, having multiple layers of backups, which is a good place to start combining cloud and external hard drives. In the event of a server failure, you will need a copy of your virtual machine in a ready-to-start state so that if a VM goes down, you can immediately fail over to a standby virtual machine. Cloud services can help with this, as well as providing enhanced availability of data for all applications, image-based replication for recovery, and also the ability to keep the production environment intact because the data is in the cloud. Thank you for attending this presentation.